Hello everyone, thank you for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. Nigeria's new Electoral Act is already shaping conversations ahead of 2027. From digital membership registers to direct primaries, conversations around electronic transmission of results of the controversy over Form EC8A. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, has now rejected INEC's revised timetable, calling it a political instrument designed to disadvantage opposition parties. At the heart of the dispute is Section 77, which requires political parties to submit detailed digital membership registers, including NIN, polling unit data, photographs, and biometric-linked information by 2nd day of April this year. That's barely weeks before primaries begin. ADC says that timeline is a practical impossibility, alleging that the ruling party had a year-long head start. They argued that disqualification for non-compliance effectively erects barriers to participation and tilts the field toward what they describe as President Tinubu's automatic self-succession project. They have also now pushed back on provisions mandating direct primaries or consensus, rejecting the removal of indirect primaries and warning that the law alongside INEC's shadow may undermine democratic competition. But the presidency has fired back, and it did so strongly through its spokesperson, Abayo Onanuga, who mentioned that the administration did not only accuse the ADC and NNPP of misinformation, but of exaggeration and political grandstanding. The presidency insists that the new law signed by President Tinubu strengthens democracy, closes loopholes for manipulation, provides for electronic transmission of results, and retains from EC8A only as a technological safeguard in areas with network failures. So what's this really about? Are we looking at electoral integrity, political preparedness, or a deeper structural contest over who controls the rules of 2027? Let's bring in Bayo Adedosu, who's co-founder of Africa Data Warehouse in Ontario, Canada. Thank you for joining us on the program this evening. I'd like us to begin with the digital membership register controversy.
Thank you very much for having me, Nifemi.
Absolutely.
Been a while.
Yeah, been a while. Good to have you as well. Thank you for joining. Section 77 requires parties to submit comprehensive digital registers with NIN, polling unit details, and photographs, failing which they cannot field candidates. I'd like you to speak from a data governance and electoral systems perspective. Is this really a reasonable modernization reform, or does the timeline create some structural inequality?
Thank you very much, Nifemi, for having me on your show today. I am getting to the point where I'm getting really tired of the Nigerian opposition. The Nigerian opposition is an opposition to itself. Rotimi Amechi said something yesterday, that the government is not their problem, that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is not their problem, that they are their own problem, that the opposition is the problem of the opposition, simply because they are not organized. All this while, since last year, that they've been talking about coalition, they've been talking about ADC, all of them have been moving together. What have they really done? They have not really come out with anything concrete. They started their membership registration, digital registration, and they stopped it midway. Who are we to blame? Do they think they'll be given time forever to do this? That's not the way it works. If they are serious, if the opposition is serious, they would have farmed up their membership. They would have farmed up everything relating to their political party, but they did not do that. They cannot be holding the system to ransom. What I see the opposition trying to do is actually trying to discredit the process, trying to discredit the outcome of the electoral process at the end of the day before it even starts. This is it. We have a bunch of unserious and problematic people to the system. And Nigeria cannot be held hostage just because a bunch of renegades think things must go in a certain way, or they want to dictate. parties have never been the ones to dictate the rules of the game. So how can they be expecting, how can they be saying they want it to run in a certain way?
But the rules we're talking about, Mr. Adedosu.
Sorry, just a quick one. Let me wrap up on this. APC did its own membership registration after ADC started its own. What are we saying? APC concluded its own before ADC.
I get you, Mr. Adedosu. But the rules we're talking about here, well, except you're referring to a different rule, is the Electoral Act that Mr. President just signed into law. And I don't think what the opposition is raising alarm about is really the law as much as the timing. So there's a 34-day window here. And ADC is arguing that they have barely a month between the deadline and primaries, which makes compliance practically impossible, especially for smaller parties. Sorry,
Nifemi, we are still talking about the law. We are still talking about the law. The law, when we are talking about a process is always time-bound. And a process must be measurable. So the electoral process is time-bound because there is a timetable. INEC works with a timetable. And it is on the basis of the amended 2026 amended Electoral Act that the INEC has reviewed its timetable. And because of the revision of the timetable, it simply means some of the things that have been pushed up have to be drawn back. And why would anybody think they have all the time in the world to do this by not putting their house in order? So we are still talking about this Electoral Act that has just been amended because we are talking about timelines. There is a timetable. So are they trying to change the timetable? Are they trying to change the way things will work? What I said earlier still stands, that the opposition is in disarray within itself.
And it is for this reason,
of itself.
It is for this reason that they have raised questions as to whether this is a case of regulatory overreach or a test of party institutional capacity. The opposition, for instance, is claiming that the ruling party began compiling digital registers as far back as February last year. In electoral administration globally, how do we assess fairness when incumbents appear better prepared for regulatory changes?
Thank you very much. You see what the opposition is saying is a very lame excuse and unacceptable. The ruling party is not at any advantage. It simply means the ruling party, as it were, is more organized, is more serious. If the ruling party started its own party registration since last year, February, what does that tell you? That shows that that is a party that has structure. That shows that is a party that is serious about the electoral process, that is ready to participate in the electoral process. And let me put it to you, in the Western world, party registration, membership registration is a continuous process. It is not something that has a defined date or a particular time that it happens. So that is what APC has done. And let us ask questions where we need to ask questions, please. What has the opposition been doing about membership drive? What have they been doing? Where have they been? They cannot say because the APC started its own process ahead of time, that means it puts APC at a disadvantage. It puts them at a disadvantage. It does not put them at a disadvantage. It simply means they lack internal organization, they lack internal cohesion, they lack structure to be able to challenge. That is what we should be looking at. We should actually ask them questions. What stopped them all this while from putting their house in order? That is the question we should be asking.
And I hear you clearly, but are you also considering the political consequence of non-compliance? Because take, for instance, that opposition parties refuse to comply or they miss the deadline and are disqualified according to this act from fielding candidates. What would that really mean for democratic legitimacy? Because we can go on and on to say, oh, they are not ready, they are not prepared, they didn't have structure. How democratic will a race be in 2027 without the opposition party, a party like the ADC? Could Nigeria face a constitutional crisis?
it's not going to be any constitutional crisis. What I said earlier is the umpire has given its rule. Okay? It's just like a game of football, soccer. The referee is the referee. It is not a case where we have VAR. The VAR in this particular instance, the VAR is actually the INEC timetable that is open to everybody, that is accessible to everybody, that everybody has access to. So that is the VAR for all the political parties. In the laws, the structure, the timelines, the timetable is not even. And they know all along that an election will hold in 2027. If we are talking about a constitutional crisis in what sense? It's unfortunate that the law now stipulates that they will not be able to field candidates. Well, what I will expect them to do in the meantime is whatever they have in their database with regards to membership registration, let them send it in. I was one of the people that was against the use of NIN for membership registration of political parties, political membership registration. I was vehemently against it because I take data protection very seriously and data exposure. I felt people were being exposed by mandating them to use their NIN for political party membership registration, where we have voters card they already have that can be used. But since that is the law is the law. It's unfortunate that the opposition is more fixated on discrediting the process when the problem itself is with them. They need to look inwards. Now they have 1 month. They can still achieve something if they are serious. It is not about going around buying corn or negotiating the price of groundnut. That is not the case. That is not what they should be doing. That's why I said they lack cohesion, they lack integration. They lack that spread. They don't have the spread. They lack the system that will actually allow them to be able to register their members and push it forward to INEC. There is not going to be any constitutional crisis because even the law, when they go to the tribunal, the law will subsist. The law will be interpreted according to the spirit of the law. There is what is called the spirit of the law. It is the spirit of the law that will be interpreted at the end of the day. But hey, I don't want a situation whereby it will look like it's a disadvantage for them, or it will look like it's a walkover, they're not participating in the electoral process. I want all parties that are serious. And mind you, it's not only ADC that is a registered political party in Nigeria. The focus has always been too much on ADC. Before, the focus was on PDP. What about other political parties? So because ADC or NNPP is having issues, does that invalidate the process? It does not invalidate the process. It simply means parties that are serious, parties that have some form of organization will forward their membership registration to INEC. And if ADC is serious, instead of talking and complaining, let them go back to the drawing boards and see what they can do to meet up.
You know, and that
if there is a way that INEC can accommodate an extension for them, oh well and good, let them speak to INEC, let them meet with INEC to explain their constraints. It's not by doing media, having media stunt all over the place. That won't push their case.
So beyond the politics of things, there are relevant issues like perception and credibility. And when we discuss opposition, you know, based off of the privilege of hindsight, you can also tell which party is at the forefront of opposition based on numbers, the stakeholders that they've been able to gather and what have you. But let's take a short break. When we return, we'll touch on data integrity as it affects the e-registration that we've seen in the past months. Stay with us, everyone. Ayo Adedosu is co-founder, Africa Data Warehouse, Ontario in Canada. Thank you for staying the course on the program. You look at Section 77, and it requires detailed personal data. We're talking about NIN, photographs, addresses, polling units, and what have you. In a country where data protection enforcement is still evolving, are there legitimate concerns about political surveillance, about data misuse or cybersecurity vulnerabilities? For instance, who audits and safeguards these party databases?
Thank you very much, Nifemi. This particular topic we are talking about ought to have been discussed, ought to have been brought to the burner long before now. I have serious issue with data management. It's not enough that Nigeria has enacted a law on data protection. When we are talking about data protection, that in itself is just a law. There are other instruments. That is a policy. Where is the technology that goes with the policy? The policy must validate the technology, or the technology must validate that policy. I don't see that technology in place right now for the way we use data in Nigeria. Data, there is a lot of data sensitive exposure, data breaches in Nigeria that we don't take serious. And when people are talking about, registering with their NIN, I wrote something. Unfortunately, I didn't get to publish it because the questions I ask, let me ask these questions. How are you collect? What is the reason? Give me a valid reason why you have to collect my NIN when I have a voter's card. Tell me how you captured, how you store this data that you're collecting from me, the management system in place, the management structure. What is your data management policy as a political party? It's not enough that the government has a policy. What is your own policy? What is your own structure? And what technology are you using to actually store the information that you're collecting from people? Are you putting it on spreadsheet? Are you just putting them on spreadsheet and into a computer loosely? Or you have a system, data management system? What is your data management system security, cybersecurity guardrail? This is something that has not been defined in Nigeria. We do not have a cybersecurity guardrail in Nigeria that actually sets the framework for data use, for data collection and data use in Nigeria. And for as long as these things are not in place, then we're exposing people. Because, hey, I want to join a political party that is a voluntary organization, and I have to submit some sensitive information about myself. You are exposing me. I will ask you questions as to, beyond the fact that I want to be a member of this party or of this group, of what use is this information you are collecting, other than the fact that you need my name, you need my home address, and you need to capture my face. Why do you want to capture anything that can implicate me, that can expose me financially or in other forms? I totally disagree with the way party registration has been mandated by INEC. I think if we do not have the technology, if we do not have the cybersecurity guardrails, we should stay away from collecting sensitive information from Nigerians. Nigeria is very loose when it comes to cyber security issues, because it is in Nigeria that official documents get leaked to the public without any consequence. And this is why we need to go the way of enterprise solution. With enterprise solution, access to information will be on need basis, and people will sign up for access to such information, not the way it is that anybody can just punch into the computer and obtain information. People even go go to banks. Anybody can just go into your bank account and check stuff about you. It should not happen. That is what I'm saying about we are not managing data securely the way we should. Having the policy is one thing. Having the instruments to validate the policy is another thing. We need another layer of security, which is the cybersecurity guardrail that Nigeria needs to put in place. And that is the responsibility of the Minister of Communication or the Ministry of Communication.
You joined us from Ontario for this conversation. How common are mandatory digital membership databases, as a global standard? Is Nigeria aligning with global best practice in experimenting in this terrain?
Well, Nigeria is actually doing very well, trying to comply with best practices. But in trying to comply, move on, join the league, we do not have the foundation, we do not have the infrastructure. It's just like the case of this electronic transmission that people are making noise about. We do not have the infrastructure for electronic transmission. Nowhere in the world do they have, no, it's electronic transmission of results in real time that people are talking about only occurs where you have electronic voting. And how many countries is doing electronic voting? I said it on a different program recently that even during the US election, the last election in 2024, Senator Elizabeth Warren, one of the presidential aspirants of the Democratic Party, was advocating for a return to manual voting for a paper trail. Here in Canada, it is manual voting and it is manual counting, nothing electronic. And it is after it has been counted that the result will be sent in. A lot of people talk without having deep understanding of electoral processes. When you conduct an election manually like we do in Nigeria, collation is done manually as well. The electronic transition people are talking about, they are confusing it for collation. Form EC8 is the main instrument, is the valid election collation document that that INEC relies on and even the court rely on. And that is why I said, if we want to be talking about electronic transmission, then the best approach, if at all, the best approach should be the BVAS machine should be enabled to be able to scan the Form EC8 that political parties agents have signed on to concerning the result. That way, we have the original, parties will have their copies, INEC will have the original, and we have the exact copy that is uploaded online. IREV is just a dashboard. IREV is just a viewing dashboard of result. It's not a collation center, it's not a collation point, because this result will still be taken to the local government collation center, will still be taken to the state collation center. I don't know why political parties, particularly the opposition, is so fixated on electronic transmission. It simply tells you that they have an agenda like we experienced in 2023. So Nigeria, to a large extent, is trying to move in the right direction without having the right infrastructure in place. Well, it is a long-term project where we need the telecommunications companies to play a major role.
We have completely run out of time. You know, as of today, new concerns are also emerging. The new law mandates direct primaries or consensus, effectively removing indirect delegate-based primaries. And we're hearing the opposition also now starting to question these and raising concerns about whether it's truly more democratic, as the presidency argues, or could it weaken internal party autonomy and increase logistical burdens? But perhaps we're going to touch on that subsequently. We have to go now. I want to say a big thank you to co-founder Africa Data Warehouse, Ontario, Canada, Bayo Adedosu. Thank you so much for talking to us on
Thank you very much, Nifemi. Just as a form of wrapping up, the Electoral Act is actually returning power to the people, members of the political parties. It's also putting an end to vote buying, to delegate buying, because delegates are bought when they go for primaries. So this is actually a good way to go, giving power to party members, giving them a sense of belonging of party membership. Why are they doing party membership if they have no say in who represents them? Thank you very much, Nifemi, for having me. Hope
if voters are bought on election day, there's nothing stopping aspirants to also buy voters during direct primaries. But
it's difficult to buy. Well, that's a conversation for another time.
But I'm sure you've heard of vote buying in the main election. So if it happens during the main election, what stops it from happening during the direct election?
Even in America, there was vote. Even in America, there was vote buying Donald Trump. But then, if you care to know, yes, there are different ways of buying votes.
Well, that confirms exactly my position that I don't think that will stop vote buying in any way. But good place to leave it, Mr. Adedosu. Thank you so much for your time on the show today. Remember, you can watch it again at midnight and 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again soon.